We are living in the most information-rich times in human history. At the touch of a button, we can access almost all of human knowledge. We can write to a climate scientist or a famous author, or we can ask questions to an astronaut, literally in space. We can read ancient texts for free, or look at satellite photos of places that we may never even visit. And we produce so much more information than ever before. An average person uses social media 2.5 hours per day, writing status updates, comments, replies, and messages to friends and family. If you calculate all of that up, it's 1,500 words per day we use just browsing the internet. Then consider the photos, videos, and calls. We create and upload over 400 million terabytes of information per day. That's roughly 500 hours of content created every single minute of every day. So in such an information-abundant time, with information literally in our pocket, why is it that people believe in conspiracy theories, such as that the Illuminati control the world, or that immigrants are eating our cats and dogs? To answer this question, we have to travel back to the early days of the internet and understand how it threatened both traditional media and political and business elites, and what they did in response. For those who grew up with the internet, like me, we don't really acknowledge how revolutionary the internet actually was, both for media and society. If you look back through history at governments and censorship, you'll find that both the government and the rich and powerful attempted to control the spread of information by controlling information technology. In the 18th and 19th century, these were printing presses, and those that were managed by revolutionaries were either destroyed or shut down. In the 20th century, if a group wanted to take over a country through revolution or coup d'etat, the first target would often be radio or television stations, so that they could control the flow of information to the population. For much of the 20th century, mass media was hierarchical in nature, with a small elite often gatekeeping what could be said or written. Of course, there's examples of groups and organisations that ran counter to governments, such as pirate radio or student newspapers, but the costs involved often meant that they struggled to have a mass audience. When the internet came around, it really upended this hierarchical relationship. Suddenly, people were able to interact with one another in unique and non-directed relationships. Early internet pioneers believed that the internet would flatten organisations, globalise society, decentralise control, and help harmonise people.
They're hackers.
Hackers penetrate and ravage private and publicly owned computer systems.
Hack the planet! Hack the planet!
Digital utopianism is very similar to what some writers and inventors thought about the power of television and radio to change the world. Almost 100 years ago, in 1921, the Russian poet Vladimir Khlebnikov embraced the radio as a wonder tool that would forge the unbroken chain of the global soul and fuse mankind. Later, Philip Farnsworth, an American television pioneer, believed that the television would end conflicts around the world as people built empathy and understanding of cultures. And maybe this was the case in the early days.
In the beginning, there was man. And for a time, it was good.
On forums such as Reddit, users are often nostalgic for the times of green text and DOS systems, when you could spend a day visiting unique blogs created by someone's grandma on the other side of the world. And as evidence of this, there's a video here of the top internet sites by traffic in the mid-1990s. We can see here that there was a much smaller gap between the amount of visitors and more competition for traffic between websites. There's often little research in the early days of the internet, so these graphs suggest that internet users often visited more unique websites than compared to the 2020s. Even for myself, when I think back to my early internet use in the 2000s, I visited many different unique websites compared to today. If we fast forward to the 2020s, we see a dramatic shift in the internet landscape. Several websites, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, they all control the lion's share of internet traffic, with few sites dominating the internet, and it's beginning to look much more like the hierarchical traditional media of the 20th century. Nonetheless, the internet is still a radical shift from traditional mass media. Through the 2000s, countries across the world were rocked with mass demonstrations for a variety of things. Calls for political or economic freedom, anti-corruption, or economic equality. There were colour revolutions of the 2000s and Occupy Wall Street, as well as the Twitter revolutions that amounted to the Arab Spring of 2012, which saw the internet play a vital role. Revolutionaries no longer needed to be tied geographically to one location. They could provide tips about the locations of police or how to handle tear gas effectively. But elites such as Vladimir Putin's government were taking careful note on the effectiveness of the internet in popular rebellion. A decentralized information system was a real threat to authoritarian governments, because unlike centralized mass media, which you could shut down TV stations, jam radio waves, or burn books, this time shutting down a website was a bit like cutting the head off a hydra. 2 more would be created in its place. We saw this with websites like Pirate Bay or drug markets like the Silk Road. If you destroy one, many more copies will pop up in their place. So if you're a government, how do you stop information if it can literally fly past the walls and guards of your country? Well, you do the opposite. Peter Pomerantsev, a journalist and writer, describes in his book This Is Not Propaganda that authoritarian governments moved from cracking down on information sources to flooding the internet with information through the use of troll armies, bots, sock puppet accounts and fake news. You probably have heard the most famous case of this during the 2016 US presidential election. The IRA, no, not them, the Internet Research Agency. They were a St. Petersburg-based troll factory led by Putin's now dead henchman and former chef, Yevgeny Prigozhin. The IRA created chaos both online and in meat space. It paid alternate sides to stage protests in the same location and did shows for political theatre. It spread fake news, and when it was discovered that this was all orchestrated by the Russian government, it didn't stop. And that was likely the point. People could now claim that you were paid by the Russian government if you started a protest in your own city. Stuff like this had been happening almost a decade earlier in the small nation of Estonia, who is a neighbour to Russia. There, the nation was rocked by riots over the removal of a Soviet-era statue. Much of this was precipitated by online disinformation, so much so that another Baltic country, Lithuania, has created a volunteer brigade of online elves who, in contrast to trolls, attempt to seek out and identify troll networks and disinformation. So in reality, we've moved from an age of information scarcity to one of information abundance.
Hey everyone, so if you like this content, I'd love it if you could do these 2 things for me. First, of course, is to like and subscribe this video. It will definitely help with my channel. The second is to check out the link in the description, which is to my website. This video is actually just part of a larger project that I've been working on, which is a book called History in the Shadows that discusses conspiracies and conspiracy theories. I'm still working on the site and I'm uploading what I've written and created so far. You can see there's things like an interactive map that I've created and graphics for the book. On there, you can also subscribe with just your email, and this will allow me to go to a publisher in the next 6 months with proof of a dedicated audience. Thanks, everyone.
Many call the media industry now an attention economy. See, there's only so much time in the world, and an internet user cannot feasibly watch or read everything. Instead, creators and websites vie for our attention and reaction. Social media companies have known this for a very long time and operated on this model. And they use a whole host of information gathered from our internet use, our age, our location, how long we watched a video, keywords we typed in the search bar. They've used this to further create a system designed to make us addicted to our screens. You may remember Elsagate. There was a brief year around 2017 where YouTube videos began posting extreme content to children, which depicted things like injection, childbirth and cannibalism, all in the format of children's TV shows like Peppa Pig, or filmed with real adult actors. This was quickly shut down by YouTube, but it sparked a question about how algorithms were affecting and adapting to our behaviour. These channels were often created by teams of people, and as I said, they contained real actors. But the situations and events within the videos seem to suggest that these weren't creators who were following their own creative desires or ideas, but rather an algorithmic abomination. Videos mishmashed characters and events with absurd and surreal plots, and contained keyword salad, strings of words designed to game algorithms. These videos were fever dreams, seemingly concocted by machines and created by humans. This is where we end up with what is termed the dead internet theory. This was originally posted by a user in a small forum called Macintosh Cafe, and later picked up by writers from The Atlantic and The New Yorker. The theory claims that the internet died in 2016. What they mean is that the internet has started to largely be made up of bots, and humans are becoming a minority. The claim is one that the size of the internet is actually smaller than originally claimed by Google. That bots controlled by governments or businesses create and host a whole variety of websites, essentially creating a false sense of the scale of the internet. The second part is that these bots now interact with other bots and are essentially dominating the traffic of the internet. ElsaGate starts to look a bit weird if you consider that maybe humans are following the inclinations of bots that are designed to look and act like humans. It all starts to feel like some strange hall of mirrors that has bent and distorted our image, so much so that we no longer look human or machine, but some weird cyborg.
The Terminator's an infiltration unit. Part man, part machine. The 600 series had rubber skin. We spotted them easy. But these are new. They look human. Sweat, bad breath, everything. Very hard to spot.
In 2016, the dead internet theory was a fringe theory, but with the development of large language model chatbots such as ChatGPT or generative image creators such as DALL-E, this theory is starting to look a little bit more realistic. In early 2024, Google implemented an AI overview that means now when you search a question or topic, you're provided with an AI summary. And later in October, they've allowed generated images to be included within image search. Many have pointed to this flood of AI slop as proof that the dead internet theory is becoming true. When we start to consider these different theories and events, we can begin to see why the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk in 2022 for an eye-watering $44 billion makes a little bit more sense. Musk, both the richest man in the world and an absolute far-right lunatic, ostensibly claimed he was fighting spam bots and helping freedom of speech. Instead, X has now become a cesspool of Nazis, white supremacists, conspiracy theorists, along with a whole host of fake accounts. A marked difference from its previous time as a critical tool for investigative journalists, writers, and the general public to post time-sensitive information. To sum up, the internet has really shifted from a decentralized web of sites made up of people for people into some sort of false reality. Bots pretend to be people, governments flood the zone with outlandish information, and our search engines show us false information. The effect of all this is profound to our sense of reality. We're no longer able to pass out truth or as effectively as we once did. And people, friends and relatives, are falling into conspiracy rabbit holes, disinformation and scams. The 20th century seems distant now. Where we were once able to clearly identify an enemy, we're instead fighting AI-generated demons and delusions. Some people argue that if the dead internet theory really becomes true, this may actually be a good thing, as it will lead people to switch off from the internet. The whole purpose of the internet was to connect humanity, not connect us to machines. I've met other people out there who reject mainstream websites and instead continue to work off smaller blogs and web rings, going back to a more anarchic and hacker-based system of the early internet era. I really don't know how to end this video. There seems to be dark forces that are attempting to wrestle control of the internet. But I also don't think that they're going to be entirely successful. What I do know is that the internet will constantly evolve, and maybe one day we will find a form, an unsteady balance between connection and truth that will realize those dreams of those early internet pioneers.